With the release of Space Marine 2, the Warhammer 40k franchise gets another chance to immerse players into a campaign filled with alien stomping, skull crushing, and lots of guns. And let me tell you, this game absolutely follows through on all of that. I mean, it's basically Doom Guy if his doctor said he was morbidly obese. And while you may understand the game just fine, the story is rather galactic in scale, which is why in this video I'm going to give you the full picture of both Space Marine games 1 and 2 and how they fit into the context of the overall Warhammer 40k universe. First, I'll explain the basic foundational lore, everything you'll need to know, followed by the introduction of you, the player, and the character of Dimitri and Titus, the events of the first game, how it ultimately leads to a crushing twist, and where it all concludes in Space Marine 2. So without further ado, grab your thunder hammers, suit on up, and harden your minds, because in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Before we get into Space Marine 1 and 2, allow me to give you the briefest possible explanation of the lore, just the relevant bits so you have a foundational understanding of the universe the games take place in. Here's the TLDR. Essentially, our main factions for these games will be the Orcs, Man, Chaos, and Tyranids. So, alright, there's the universe, right? And then there's like this kind of upside-down version of the universe called the Warp. To add to that, the Warp is also Hell, and has, at this point, 4 gods known as Chaos Gods. The Wrathful Khorne, the Devious Tzeentch, the Pestilential Nurgle, and the Cruel Slaanesh. They exist from suffering, and the Warp is made even more hellish from suffering too. For example, every time a YouTuber does a sponsored segment disrupting the flow of the existing video they've just created, the viewer's discomfort from seeing this interruption would feed into the Warp and make the Chaos God stronger from said discomfort. To illustrate my point, allow me to introduce Maraibo Go, which is a mobile monster-themed open-world survival game. With cross-platform play, you can enjoy the convenience of mobile gaming while also playing on PC. The game integrates catching and multiplayer combat, featuring over 100 classic fantastical beasts to accompany you on your adventure. The game will be globally launched on October 10th, and pre-registration is now open in the store. Click and share the link below to pre-register with your friends, and don't miss out on the excitement. Do you want to play with me? I'll be creating a special guild server and invite you to join for a special stream on the 10th of October. Play together with me, anytime, anywhere, catch and tame monsters, build your bases, battle in dungeons, and explore the open world. Join Maraibo Go and be a part of our guild. Come join the official Maraibo Go Discord with the link below, and join me, Netty the Noodle, on Discord. You can register to join my guild and play together. You'll receive the exclusive Netty the Noodle gift code as soon as possible on October 10th. If you like games where you can tame creatures small and large, experience competitions, explore, collect, and survive, then Maraibo Go is perfect for you. Join Maraibo Go and be a part of our guild. Do it, please. With the Warp fed from the amount of suffering you just experienced, you should now have a pretty good idea of how the kind of dimension works, and trust me, it's gonna come in later. Warp stuff aside, let's talk about humans in the Warhammer 40k universe and a little bit of their history. At some point along their evolution, way after the 21st century mind you, humankind was on the brink of collapse. Their main source of travel through the star system was through the Warp, and once that Warp got completely screwed by a bunch of suffering, death, and YouTube ad segments, its thousands of colonies were now completely separated, with their trade routes being cut off, and many of them were not self-sufficient and went totally extinct. But suddenly, humanity's knight in shining armor appeared out of nowhere. This guy called the Emperor of Mankind came in and revealed himself after waiting a really long time. He started to rally what was left of the crumbling race of mankind to link the colonies back together once again and restore humanity's former glory. The Emperor had 21 Primarchs, which were his sons, and created the Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines, and commonly referred to as the Emperor's Angels, these dudes in big-ass power armor, alongside the Adeptus Mechanicus that originated from Mars and were highly cybernetic humans that altered themselves and worshipped a machine god. Back to the Primarchs though, these lesser versions of the Emperor all possessed some type of power, and each Adeptus Astartes held genetic material of their Primarch. The Primarchs all went on to lead their own legion of Astartes, like the Ultramarines, the Black Templars, the Grey Knights, and a bunch of others. One day though, somehow the Chaos Gods got involved and halted the Emperor's plan, scattering all of the Primarchs across the galaxy. This was obviously a big blow to the the Emperor's plan, but he tried his best to shrug it off and embarked with his many legions of Space Marines on a journey that was known as the Great Crusade, a mission to reunite all of Terra, or in other words, Earth's lost colonies. He would also need to find all of his Primarchs and reunite them with their legions, and so he did, like every single one. In the later days of the Crusade, the Emperor had something he needed to do, research that could change all of mankind's future if successful. So he bestowed the title of War Master to one of his sons, and who he thought to be his successor and right-hand man, Horus. The Emperor then returned to Terra, which again is just what they call Earth in the Warhammer universe, to begin experimentation on a new way of travel that was both faster and safer than their previous method via the warp. It was something called the Old Eldari Webway system, a large kind of network of interdimensional passageways. At some point, Horus was becoming tainted and influenced by the Chaos Gods, basically turning into their puppet. He slowly began to taint other Primarchs and personnel within the Imperium of Man as well, and this event gradually escalated into one of the most important points in 40k history, known as the Horus Heresy. The Horus Heresy was really a time period that lasted many years and trillions of lives were lost. Without getting too much into it, Horus just screwed over and completely decimated many planets, killing a ton of people and groups. At some point, Horus decided to face the Emperor himself, mortally wounding the leader. Instead of dying, the Emperor was like, nah, I'm gonna do my own thing, and fucking evaporated Horus. The Emperor, now completely fucked up by Horus and his heresy, established two things relevant to contextualizing the Space Marine games. One, the Emperor is now a husk of his former self and is still being kept alive with 1,000 psychic human sacrifices every single day. He provides benefit to the humans even while in this state, where his psychic powers are still present, and humans would be doomed without him. And number two, the Imperium of Man began taking crazy drastic measures to ensure something like the Horus Heresy would never happen again, becoming even more dystopian than it already was, including the Ultramarine Primarch creating a new set of laws for the Space Marine legions. Also, the legion are now called chapters, and the Ultramarine Primarch's new rules were that each Astartes chapter was limited to a certain number of Marines so that no chapter could be overwhelmingly stronger than the others, like what happened in the Horus Heresy. And that's essentially the backstory of the Imperium of Man, a simple explanation of all that you really need to know. Before we get to the game though, you need to know about Tyranids. Tyranids are like the galactic super race equivalent of you marching down to your kitchen at 3 a.m. hungry for beans. It's a super fucking overpowered, hungry hive mind alien race, and its only goal is to consume all the biomass they can. When they invade a planet, they kill literally everything. This is not an exaggeration. All biomass is consumed, the bodies of their enemies, the trees, the plants, even their own bodies of the Tyranids that died during the conflict. No biomass is lost. These things are just stupid OP and adapt to fucking everything. Also, not to mention the entire galaxy is surrounded by their hive fleets as seen below. So yeah, if the Tyranids' existence in the Warhammer 40k universe fills you with existential dread, let's move on to a lighter topic. Yes, orcs. And that finally takes us to Space Marine 1. We begin on a ship with 3 Ultramarines. Balding Space Uncle Sidonus, a crayon-eating rat named Leandros, and you, Captain Titus. Heading down to Gaia, this weird industrial forge planet, your mission is to secure a facility called Manufactorum Ajacis. You realize that the ship is a little too slow, so you decide to don your trademark Space Marine jetpack and hippity-hoppity on out. You land on this really low poly orc ship and begin to hack and slash your way forward until it eventually crashes. But you're in power armor, so this is fine. Marching onward, you kill more orcs, which are actually secretly mushroom creatures, don't ask, and you meet up with Leandros and Sidonus before finding bomb docks. Dude, these things are just like if someone straps C4 to a bunch of bulb dogs. Then you meet the big boss.
Yeah, so what if we just eat all the orc funguses?
What the fuck? We enter this bunker and we meet a real female gamer girl. I love real female girls. By the way, I think now is a good time to acknowledge that Space Marines are like 8 feet tall and shoot explosive Red Bull-sized rounds, which for context in real life could be used for anti-aircraft shells. So a normal human being shooting this would shatter their entire body, but big gun equals big fun. So we head on through a series of tunnels, find a bomb, and plant that bomb on a cannon shell for it to go boom onto itself, or you stare at it because no thoughts head empty.
Ned.
What?
Ned. Were you not listening what you had to do?
No?
Do you not see the obvious ghost
Yeah,
of a bomb?
do you see the fucking hologram? No, blow the fucking thing up. This is why you play Ark.
One mildly difficult bombshell pushing wave sequence later. It's not actually that hard, I was just lobotomized at birth. And then it blows up. From there you hop onto a giant train that's also the orcs' battering ram and proceed to blow it up as well by blasting their overly tanky dropship down with a sense of gritty 2011 gamer rage. After miraculously surviving more blunt force trauma because big armor, you get off the train and find a servo Turbo Skull. It sends a message to the gang from a guy named Inquisitor Drogon, telling them to find and secure him. One brisk walk later, and you find Drogon. He tells the trio that he'd been working on a powerful weapon that could eviscerate the orcs, and that powering it is a rather dangerous reactor with the potential to blow up the entire planet. So they're like, yeah, we should probably turn that off in case the orcs' main goal is to blow up. The team goes down on an elevator into the nut freezing room and defends the reactor while it opens up. Grimskull, this orc asshole, shoots the bot that was meant to get the reactor, so Titus grabs the power source and fucking dies. Just kidding, because Titus wakes up underneath the now destroyed reactor and finds out that he shouldn't have survived according to Drogon. He then wanders through the tunnels until he finds his team again. Leandros was insistent on staying behind because rats follow rat law and Leandros is a rat. So anyway, they get out of the tunnels and reach the surface where the air pollution looks like Detroit, but British edition. Once you fight through copious waves of more orcs, you meet back up with Inquisitor Drogon and he's all like, you really shouldn't be alive because this thing uses warp energy. And you're all like, okay, cool. But anyways, what about the weapon? Then he explains that the weapon is called the Psychic Scourge and that it could tear the whole planet in half if it malfunctioned. But the orc attack is getting really bad, and so Drogon's like, okay, let's go get the planet-cracking super weapon. It's just over in my research facility.
Dude, those are your soldiers.
Oh, sorry, I like to kill.
Those are the Imperial Guard.
See, this just shows that I'm not racist. Wait, hold on. Where's the Inquisitors?
I will draw the orcs off and meet you there.
What the fuck? He's not here. He's not in the cutscene. Titus separates from the main team and acts as a distraction as the other three get a Valkyrie, a plane thing, to reach said facility. Titus crashes onto a bridge and gets picked up.
It's even that until they do that.
Oh my god.
You know, like in fucking Incredibles 1 when the fucking main antagonist gets sucked into the jet turbine?
Oh, it's
Yeah. That's all I can think of.
I fucking love that. I love that Jesse do the fact
What?
that they...
And then gets dropped off in a desert. They proceed until they reach the facility and enter via an alternative door. As they go through the facility, they have to fight through the security system because it assumes they're Xenos for some reason. They turn off the system's power. Oh, dogs. And then they fire the weapon and it kills all the orcs. Hold on, they're not dying. Oh, so it turns out that the weapon opened up a portal to the warp, which as we established is basically hell. And Drogon has been dead this entire time, actually being possessed by a demon minion of Nemeroth, the real antagonist of the game. This major twist, which I didn't see coming because I'm small-brained, leads us to... As they try to figure out how to fix their own mess, Leandros brings up how sus it is that Titus keeps resisting the warp and how their actions are against the Codex. Titus and Sidonis tell him that
Code is more what you'd call guidelines than actual rules.
they find Mira and help reactivate the guns to defend from the orc horde. Titus, on his own, eventually stumbles into an area and gets yoinked by Grimskull, leading to an actual 1v1 with orc rules. Titus fights Grimskull until the brute falls, and they have one last exchange before Titus blows off his head. Or not, because his head reappeared after the cutscene. Why couldn't we have just been friends?
Hold on, look at his head. No.
I know!
Titus meets up with his team again, and they head back to the Manufactorum. They reach the Titan. Oh my god. How the fuck do I not... And then it shoots at this tower thing, blowing it up.
Firing now.
Cool. The trio push onward, but Titus gives Sidonis the warp core as Titus and Leandros distract the incoming Chaos Marines. They head to the rooftop, but then Nemeroth teleports in behind Sidonis and penetrates him. Sidonis dies and Nemeroth grabs the warp core. Titus, due to being a blank, which means he's very resistant to warp-related activities, goes after Nemeroth on his own so as to not endanger anyone else, heading straight for that stupid tower. Titus reaches basically this planet's version of the Golden Gate Bridge and assaults the incoming Chaos Defenders with a mix of dropped-off Blood Angels and Ultramarines. You know, bridges are scary for YouTubers because you might say a certain word. Okay. You reach the end of the bridge and get picked up / dropped off onto the tower. Then Titus rips and tears his way onward until at long last you fight the final... Oh, okay. You fight all his minions first. Where am I getting shot from? Where am I? I can't move! Game design! Game design! Now it's time. Oh. Okay. before the credits roll, it is revealed at the end that the fucking rat is in fact a rat and reported you, Titus, as being sus. So now he's accused of committing heresy because he is special and didn't die from, again, the warp power cell thing exploding in his hand. So he's taken away. After everything you just did, playing as Titus, arguably saving this planet from certain disaster, you got nothing more than a cruel accusation of corruption and a betrayal by the squad mate that still remains alive. Hopefully you caught all that. I'm gonna assume you did. And yes, while Space Marine 1 is a piece of shit sometimes, it can be a little hard to follow, Space Marine 2 is a whole joy to experience. Enter... We pick up the story of the Space Marine games in the second one. The Imperial jungle world of Karaku sets the stage, where you start as a leader of a Death Watch squad, with the objective to release a virus bomb that'll ultimately stall a bunch of Tyranids. And while in the first game you voluntarily hop out of your ship, this one sees you getting absolutely face-fucked by flying Tyranids and basically abducted faster than EDP tried to abduct the Cupcakes. Once you land all cool-like, you quickly find out that your entire squad is getting brutally taken out. You come across these bodies one by one, getting radio comms from the others in their dying moments. Once you obtain the virus bomb, you proceed alone to complete the objective because, if nothing else, you need to get that thing in the air. Once you finally reach this tunnel thing that can shoot it out, a horde of Tyranids descend on your position. These waves are the last thing you may come to know, and before dying, you take off your helmet, revealing that this whole time, you've been Captain Titus, just like the first game. Why are you the leader of a Death Watch squad? And what is the Death Watch anyway? Well, it's basically the frontline defense of Space Marines. Probably the most deadly fate you could be dished out, and even those who are accused of heresy, if not executed, can be appointed to the Death Watch, hence why Titus is in it. He's a leader, likely because of how incredibly skilled he is. I mean, this dude has been crushing skulls for hundreds of years by now as the superhuman, basically demigod that he is. But back to the mission at hand. In what he assumes are his last moments, Titus slaughters as many of the forces as he can before getting impaled by a Carnifex as Ultramarines move in at last and prevent it from finishing you off. And everything goes black. You wake up in Kadaku's orbit, on a battle barge where most of the game's downtime takes place. Shirtless Titus shows he has a whole lot of scars, possibly due to the fact that because he literally died when he got impaled by the Carnifex, he was remade. This skull guy he wakes up next to, known as the Chaplain, says that in his recreation, he now has become a new type of Space Marine, a Primaris, which is basically an evolved, taller, newer breed. The Chaplain tells Titus that he was reassigned and is no longer in the Death Watch. He's like, yeah, you're good, man, but also not really.
You have served penance in the Death Watch for almost a century, and not once have you faltered. But you will never know redemption.
You know, this guy's reminding me of a certain little rat belonging to a certain sewer. With that said, we see this cool cutscene of your new armor getting super glued on, and with that, I'd say you're ready.
My pledge is eternal service.
Welcome aboard. Now you get to roam around and carry on with the next objective, with the goal of earning the trust of the other Ultramarines so you can fully be redeemed. But your other goal is to find Acheron, this Scottish ball of sunshine and crushed dreams. He explains that you are now a lieutenant, or as everyone says in this fucking game, a left-tenant. Where is the right-tenant? What about David Tennant? I'm sorry, but hold on. Where is the F in lieutenant? Is this a British people thing? Henry Cavill, please, I need to know. Why do they keep saying it like this? Holy shit. Carrying on, the TLDR is that Acheron has tasked you with your first mission. Now that you're an Ultramarine again, you need to head back to Kadaku and get some big old weapons online, as well as evacuating some weapons because they're basically gonna abandon this planet. It's kind of a bit of a lost cause. Before heading out, you meet your team, this dude named Gadriel and this other guy named Chiron. So you head out, doomslay your way forward, protect some targeting systems and shit, and use this giant gun to blast an enormous hole in a Tyranid ship. And holy shit, that explosion is immeasurable. And wow, that's a lot of biomass. After meeting back up with Captain Acheron, he says your next task is to evacuate an insufferable tech priest named Archimagos Nozick. If you recall from before, these are basically the Adeptus Mechanicus that I briefly explained before. Their god that they worship is the Deus Mechanicus, or what is known as the Omnissiah. And they probably smell very strongly of motor oil. I just get that impression. Nonetheless, before abandoning Kadaku, you need to evacuate Nozick, because he's a high-value asset. So you head there, and he's like,
No. I need my research. Go into my laboratory that's totally not infested with rats and get my shit, or I guess I'll just fucking die.
So you head there, using a flamethrower just like McCready, and you transmit the data before getting the fuck out of there. But as it turns out, as Nozick evacuates, his ship suddenly starts blowing up faster than a combustible lemon, and they go down. One brisk jog later, and it turns out, definitely unlikely that gravity caused this guy to be impaled in that really, really specific way. So after you and the boys find some markings of chaos, it is reasonably understood that there is some sussy shit that happened here.
Chaos is the same as it's always been.
Titus has a moment where he's feeling the effects of chaos, or PTSD, and then an evac team comes for pickup. So with the Nozick skewered, and strangely his cargo untouched, you head on back to home base, and Acheron explains that while it sucks Nozick died, he did have an apprentice, this guy named Marius Luz. His last known location was in a Mechanicus facility on the other planet, Avarax. Titus voices his concerns about the important object belonging to Nozick, and the presence of the enemy. I mean, they killed Nozick, but didn't take the thing integral to the project he's working on? Why would that be? Acheron brushes it off and informs Titus that the only other person who can complete Nozick's project is the apprentice. So Team Titus heads to the facility on Avarax, where they'll be able to figure out where Luz is specifically. Titus takes the opportunity to open confidential files pertaining to Graia, the planet from the first game, Drogon, as well as something called Project Aurora, because I mean, bro has had like at least 100 years of pent-up confusion and trauma about the whole heresy accusation at the end of the first game, so can you really blame him? Upon peering inside the classified file, Titus discovers that super important item of Nozick's was actually the power source from the first game that the Adeptus Mechanicus has pieced together and are once again trying to use as a super weapon. Gadriel demands answers from Titus on how he knows all this and why he's acting so sus, but Titus brushes it off and gives half-assed answers that just reaffirm Gadriel's suspicion. Once they find Luz's location, they set out to recover him when they come across an old friend of Chiron. He helps them move forward, and once they arrive, they come across a few soldiers who tell them that they're supposed to guard the area. But Chiron, sensing something suspicious, notices a chaos tattoo on the arm of the soldier and cries out that it's a trap before the soldier sets off a bomb that conveniently sends a rod of rebar right into Cool Space Marine's eye. Fuck. Chiron then loses his fucking mind and starts absolutely shredding the waves of Chaos Marines that appear, like he's Doom Guy on ketamine. Titus scolds him, but it really doesn't do shit. The team eventually finds Luz inside the dome and begin escorting him back to the ship, but while on their transport, Luz starts spouting about a Captain Titus on Graia who had handled the power source and was said to have died, which made Gadriel even more suspicious of Titus. The question becomes, will Titus have enough resolve to turn this situation away from what happened with Leandros so many decades before? And that brings us to Avarax is being completely overrun by Tyranids, who are also jamming the Space Marines from calling for help, so Team Titus and another squad set off to complete two objectives. The other squad's role is to take down the Hive Tyrant, which will basically kill or put into disarray all of the Tyranids through the synaptic shock through the death of said Tyrant, and Team Titus's role is to get to something called the Astropath and send out a signal to Calgar, chapter master of the Ultramarines, to let him know about Project Aurora and how it's a bad idea. This Astropath is basically a phone, if it instead used human vessels and a psychic to communicate through the warp. This is the perfectly ethical evolution of the iPhone, so Apple, you better be taking notes. Once the gang arrives at the Astropath, you meet Neoma and learn that the forces of chaos are attacking anyone who attempts to send a message through the warp. After some persuading though, the Astropath agrees to send the message to Calgar and seemingly does so before randomly stopping and screaming about how Titus is a traitor who plans to kill everyone. This is all Gadriel needed to hear before immediately rushing to try to kill Titus before Chiron does the most base thing possible in this situation and shoots the Astropath, revealing her to be corrupted by chaos and a puppet of Imura, a sorcerer lord of the Thousand Suns. After a brief scuffle with Imura, culminating in him fleeing like a little bitch, Gadriel apologizes to Titus for doubting him, and they return back to the ship to inform Acheron of what happened. Then Scottish Daddy makes you set out to the cemetery world of Demirium, where Luz is working on Project Aurora. As you and the gang arrive, Gadriel shows some real character development.
The Codex Astartes does not support this action, but I am looking forward to it.
Holy shit, he's not just a rat like Leandros. I love this guy. Once you reach the planet, you start to fight through waves of Chaos Marines seemingly trying to stop Project Aurora, and you discover that Demirium is also a Necron tomb world. And by the way, Necrons are like this super ancient race from a really long time ago, but it doesn't matter. Once you reach Luz, you discover Chaos Marines seemingly frozen in place by the Aurora weapon. Once you get closer, Imura appears and attempts to stop Luz, who promptly seems to banish him to the fucking Shadow Realm until, as it turns out, Luz is a fucking idiot and eats shit. Yeah, Imura Imura is perfectly fine. In fact, this was all his plan from the start. When Luz reversed the polarity of the device, Imura just skipped on back and revealed that he was using the tech priest for his grand plan of acquiring the super weapon. Shocker, I know. So the team returns to the surface and discovers that an obelisk has opened a huge warp rift and tons of Chaos Marines are pouring out as the Ultramarines make a desperate last stand to hold them back. Once they meet back up with Acheron, what follows are the most badass sequences where your team and the Ultramarines make a final stand on a mound, banner in hand, holding off countless waves of Chaos forces. Right as they're about to be overwhelmed, Calgar appears. With a huge host of Ultramarines, you drive back the forces of Chaos and reconvene with Calgar, informing him of your plan to stop Imura and gain Calgar's full support. Gadriel has the idea to reverse the polarity of the other obelisks to close the warp rift, and Titus is like, hey, that's a pretty good idea. Gadriel almost dies twisting this thing. You rush to turn off the remaining obelisks, and this time, Chiron wants to be the one to twist it.
Gabriel just fucking lucky and let him like, bruh.
Poor Gadriel probably wishes he was disabled. After turning off the obelisks with the help of the other squads from earlier, you rejoin Calgar's main force and charge into the final battle against Imura's forces. Calgar gets led into a trap, but the trio refuse to let him die alone and they follow right behind. Eventually, Team Titus reunites with Calgar and fights Imura one last time. While Calgar distracts Imura, Titus gets over to the power source and grabs it again, this time finally crushing the thing for good. Imura, hopefully, dies from the surge of chaos energy emitted and upon waking up, Titus finds himself surrounded by Ultramarines. Gadriel, Chiron, and Calgar are all still breathing. Once he gets to his feet, everyone lets out a cheer, and it cuts to a reward ceremony where, for his act of heroism, Titus is presented the Laurels of Victory, which is probably like the silver play button, but for Space Marines. Titus is then informed he was recommended for a mission by the chaplain that'll take him away from the second company for a while. He then says his goodbyes to Chiron and Gadriel, and meets with the chaplain near the ship, who congratulates him on gaining the trust of the Ultramarines in Calgar, before telling him that the risk of corruption is everywhere, and that if Titus ever betrays the Emperor, the chaplain would strike him down, right before revealing himself to have been Leandros this entire time. God damn it, Ratman strikes again. And with that, we conclude the stories of Space Marine 1 and 2. But while they're both rather short snippets focusing on the character of Dimitri and Titus, the Warhammer 40k universe is infinitely bigger, much more than I myself even know, as I've literally only been exposed to this franchise for like a single week. For the time that I've spent with these Space Marine games, Warhammer 40k has shown itself as a gritty, body horror-infused nightmare universe with eon-spanning histories, Victorian industrial aesthetics, and vast machinescapes. And most of all, Warhammer is about war. Not just the reality of it, but the irony of the evil cycle. Just as war never changes, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more.